I need someone to show me my place in all this.
Nothing will stand in our way.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I will finish what you started.
Who are you?
I'm no one. There are stories about what happened.
It's true. All of it.
The Force. It's calling to you.
May the Force be with us.
My nerd world.
Just let it in.
Ojaba. Why does she get a blaster and I don't? Ojaba.
It's episode number 106 of the My Nerd World Star Wars podcast. I'm your host, Jon Justice, for the final show of 2017, and what significance does that have? It's the last show until I start doing shows in 2018. Look, I love Christmas. New Year's is fine because it takes place in the middle of my Christmas break. But, at the end of the year, apart from the things that surround it, like Christmas and the Star Wars movies that we've been able to enjoy, the end of the year, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of retrospectives, which is a little strange considering the fact that the podcast is based on speculation or going back over a movie. But I'm just not a big fan of compilations that come at the end of a year where we get the best of 2017 and all. I want to move forward. I want to look forward. And I guess that fits in well with the show today, which will be the third part of my review of Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, and looking a bit ahead, looking at what Rian Johnson has created and what it means for not just the future of this trilogy, Episode 9, not just what it means for the future of the franchise, but I'll talk a little bit, time permitting, because it's the last thing on my list to get to today. Time permitting, a little bit about what it means for the fandom moving forward, because what Rian Johnson ended up doing with The Last Jedi is going to have a big impact on shows like this. It's going to have a big impact on all the different podcasts out there, because there's not as much speculation to have. I mean, it's there, but certainly not what we've gone through over the course of the past few years leading into Episode 8, and not even what we got leading into Episode 7. And I think that's another facet of this ridiculous backlash that has taken place over The Last Jedi, is that we have entered into new territory. And I didn't even really realize this part of it until I sat down to put down my list of things I wanted to talk about today after my sixth viewing of the show, which I did this morning. I went to an 8:45 a.m. showing at my local Andover cinema, and when it was negative 15 degrees outside, holy cow, it was cold. But I realized as I was going through my list that when it comes to the fandom and what has happened with the fandom, Episode 8 is kind of the anomaly until we have another movie like an Episode 7. Episode 7, The Force Awakens, left things so open and presented so many questions that didn't get answered that it provided that opportunity for this rampant speculation that I was certainly a part of over the course of the past few years leading into The Last Jedi, which I also think has led to this bizarro world vocal backlash to the movie. I don't think that's going to happen with Episode 9 because of the fact that we don't have the type of speculation that we had before, unless you're still an individual that's clinging to the hope that Snoke and his dying was a trick of some sort, and that Kylo Ren was lying about Rey. I don't personally believe that Kylo Ren was lying about Rey. I believe what he said about her parents was correct. As a matter of fact, she was the first one to say it before he did. she said they were nobodies, and then he just reiterated what she said. I think we covered that last week. And Snoke is obviously dead. That's, I think that's pretty clear. And I heard on the MakingStarWars.net, now this is podcasting podcast, Jason Ward made a comment, and I totally agree. It made me kind of laugh. He's like, look, that scene when Hux shows up in the throne room in The Last Jedi, and we get the up-close look of Snoke with his tongue kind of sticking out, is really all that you need to know about whether or not Snoke is really dead. There was no trickery involved. Okay, so moving forward, we're going to get to that on the show today. And I'll break down the final act of the movie, my thoughts on it, because I haven't had a chance to really get into the battle on Crate and some of the things that took place and that battle between Luke, Force-projected Luke, and Kylo Ren. I want to expand upon that a little more and talk a bit about this trilogy and how this trilogy really is going to stand apart from episodes 1 through 6, and I think that's by design. They're connected, but they're not connected. So I want to start off here, however, in the show.
Fulfill your destiny.
And our destiny is a new Star Wars movie coming out in about 5 months called Solo, A Star Wars Story, of which we have gotten virtually nothing of yet. I was really hoping that the trailer would have dropped before the show this week, but it hasn't yet. There's some speculation that it may happen next week, but it's really just, at this point, as far as I can tell, people that are extrapolating because we have big sporting events coming up, especially the college football, that they're going to drop the Han Solo trailer. Other people saying that it's going to come out of nowhere. It'll be on New Year's Day. Either way, I think it comes down to they're going to have to start the promotion of the Solo film very, very soon. I do have a couple of things of note to talk about Han Solo, and then we'll get back to the Last Jedi. And one of those is there was an image that was leaked this week and it was promotional art, and it was really weird because it was clearly promotional art from Disney. And it came from a Russian source. So what it looks like is Disney put out some promotional material to entities overseas to promote the film. Artwork that they can use to slap on on items and whatnot. And so there was one particular piece of artwork that showed the cast. It showed Chewie, it showed Han, it showed Lando, it showed the character played by Khaleesi, whose name suddenly escapes me. Amelia Clark. Showed Amelia Clark. It's really cool imagery. Just basically headshots of these individuals put together with this sort of yellowish, orangish motif behind it. And then it also showed a newer from before A New Hope Millennium Falcon that had a different nose on the front of it. And for those that don't know, the mandibles on the front of the Millennium Falcon, the thought has always been, and I think it's been covered in some of the novels, if not some comic books, that that's where cargo goes. There's an insert that pops in, and there's actually an old Kenner toy that did this. They actually they stuck a ship that kind of fit in there, and it was like an escape pod. So they added this nose to it, which gives the front of the Millennium Falcon a point. It looks really, really cool. And so this would be what the Millennium Falcon would look like if it was carrying cargo. And it's interesting because it actually makes it look more like a complete spaceship. Don't get me wrong, I love the Millennium Falcon, and I like the way that it looks and how it looks different. But this makes it look like if somebody were trying to make a straight-up spaceship regular version of that, where the Millennium Falcon looks like it does have a piece missing, but it's what we're all used to. Either way, this promotional image got released, and somebody in Russia slapped a fake Han Solo, A Star Wars Story in Russian logo on it. So Disney denied that they created the artwork, but the promotional artwork was clearly coming from Disney Lucasfilm. And it was the first thing that we've seen of the movie. And it's, and honestly, seeing that photo for a film that I'm not completely, I'm excited for, obviously, because of Star Wars, but because I'm not totally excited for a Han Solo movie. Got me for the first time kind of excited about a Han Solo movie. We also got news just today, and it's Saturday. We also got news today that John Williams is going to be writing the theme for the standalone movie, slated to come out on May 25th, and I'm reading directly from the Variety.com article. So John Williams is going to score the Han Solo theme, and then, as was announced earlier, John Powell will write the score. So John Williams will write Han Solo's theme, and then John Powell is going to go and write the entire score, and he can use John Williams' theme that he'll write directly for Han Solo. And for those that aren't familiar with John Powell, he has an Oscar nomination for How to Train Your Dragon, which has a fantastic score. Also scored the Bourne action franchise, United 93, Ferdinand this year, as well as Happy Feet and the Rio movies. He's got a very distinct voice, John Powell does, and I'm excited to hear what he'll do for the Han Solo movie. And look, we just have to get used to this now. John Williams is not going to be obviously around with us forever. I would be excited if he were able to do episode 9, but I honestly don't anticipate that is going to be the case. We'll have to see. I mean, J.J. Abrams is going to have to put this movie together in the next 2 years, obviously, so depending on how much he gets done, I suppose that John Williams could come in and compose it, or he could go and compose it, could write, the score and then have somebody else perform it, I suppose. I don't know how they'll use that wording there, compose and perform. So those are, that's a bit of the Han Solo news that I have for this week. And obviously this is something that we'll be talking about in future episodes as we get further past The Last Jedi, before the Blu-ray release, and then prior to the Han Solo movie coming out. But look, I'm excited for the film. It's a Star Wars movie. I love Rogue One. I'm sure that I'll end up loving the Han Solo movie. I'm not one of these individuals that's going to sit back and say that, Harrison Ford is my only Han Solo. No, that's ridiculous. I'm curious to see what they're able to do with it. And I like Ron Howard as a director. I like a lot of his movies. Not all of his movies, but I like a lot of his movies. It's not the saga films, right? It doesn't carry the weight. It doesn't carry the mythology of those saga films. But, they're going to be fun movies. And I'm looking forward to seeing it. And I'll be there on opening night and probably see it several times in the movie theater before I end up buying the Blu-ray and watching it over and over and over again.
Something inside me has always been there. But now it's awake. And I need help.
So I went out this morning, and for my last time for vacation, took in Star Wars The Last Jedi for my 6th viewing in the theater, and still love this film. I guess I keep saying it after every episode that right now, as it stands, it's my favorite Star Wars movie. And there's still little tiny subtle things that I pick up on it more, that I pick up on watching it more and more. And there are moments in the film that I appreciate and like more and more. It is a Star Wars movie to me in every sense of the word. And this movie, and I keep equating this to music, and I know I've done this a few times now, but being a massive Depeche Mode fan, and I've talked about how there's some Depeche Mode albums that I like more than others, and a lot of times I'll look at a Depeche Mode album as a whole, and then did it hit all the right notes for me? Did it have the right number of beats of the things that I want in a particular Star Wars movie? For example, with The Last Jedi, not a slight, but just as an observation, there's no good space battle per se in The Last Jedi, apart from the very beginning when Poe and Finn escape from the finalizer, right at the beginning of the film. But even then, it's just them by themselves. What I like about The Last Jedi at the moment is that it has a little bit of everything that I want in a Star Wars movie. If you're picking a Star Wars film and you want to watch one that hits all the right notes, that kind of, I want to watch a Star Wars movie that's going to give me everything that I love in a Star Wars, everything I love about Star Wars in a single movie, it's The Last Jedi. It hits every single beat. We get some great, that opening footage from the beginning of the film, some great space battle footage with Poe taking on the Dreadnought. You get a little bit more of, more in terms of action at the end on Crate. You get something that's done the best of any Star Wars movie, and that is that emotional connection between Kylo Ren and Rey. You get the moment with Luke and Yoda, which is quickly becoming my favorite moment. Just the movie hits every single one of my Star Wars feels. And so that's why currently it is still my favorite Star Wars movie. Now, that being said, I watched The Force Awakens 2 nights ago and just sat down and watched it. I didn't have the iPad, didn't have my cell phone, just put it aside and just sat down and watched it. And I try to do that more and more. I find myself getting so distracted that I lose, you lose parts of the movie. You lose what the director is trying to do. We can't always do that, but when I have the opportunity to just watch the film, I find it to be a much more enjoyable experience than if I've got it on in the background or if I'm sitting there and I'm playing on my phone or doing whatever. And so I just sat down and watched The Force Awakens and still continue to absolutely love that movie. It is very different than The Last Jedi. There is absolutely no doubt about that. In tone and in humor, they roll very well one into the other, but in terms of structure, in terms of depth, The Last Jedi just has a lot more going on with it. I think that's a good thing. It's more epic in scope. There are obviously more questions answered. It has way more depth and emotion, and certainly gets way deeper into the mythology than The Force Awakens does. The Force Awakens is the perfect setup to The Last Jedi, just in the same way that A New Hope was the perfect setup to The Empire Strikes Back. You can't have one without the other. So they're both great for very different, distinct reasons, and I love both of those films for that. And because of that, and we'll go ahead and I'll get to this part of the show. I was planning on doing it later on, but since we're here, this sequel trilogy is going to be very different. It is very much going to set itself apart. And I'm glad that it's going to. I love the fact that we've got a prequel trilogy that establishes this world, this universe, the politics of it, gives us the backstory of the stuff we learned in the original trilogy, because we're probably not going to ever have a circumstance like this again, right? I doubt we're going to have a circumstance, at least in my lifetime, where we'll have a trilogy and then we'll end up getting a backstory on that trilogy. It's a very unique circumstance of what we got with the original trilogy and what George Lucas did by going back and doing the prequels. And then you get this sequel trilogy that really is a 3-movie arc introducing us to brand new characters to close out these 9 movies, but it really does set itself apart while still having those original trilogy characters in it. And I do love it for that, because it's got the connective tissue. It obviously connects to the original 6 movies, but it's going to be very different. And what I love is, after watching The Last Jedi today, and I got a little bit of this the last time I saw it on Viewing 5, and then more so today, is I'm genuinely excited to see what J.J. Abrams goes and does with these characters. What Rian Johnson was able to do to bring them to a different level. And the potential with this clean slate, because it really is a clean slate. I've heard people complain, I disagree, I've heard people complain about The Last Jedi undoing things that The Force Awakens did, taking away the mask and the setting up of Snoke and getting rid of Snoke, and then what happened with Captain Phasma. It's like, I don't see it that way. I see it all as moving forward. Like Kylo Ren says in the movie, you have to let go of the past. Kill it if you have to. It's the only way that you can become what you're truly meant to be. I mean, there's this whole meta thing going on with the movie and with the fandom that is about that very thing that a lot of fans can't seem to realize or to let go. But what I love about what Rian Johnson did was, he got rid of Kylo's mask. We don't need Kylo Ren's mask. He doesn't need this anymore. We're going to make him evil without the mask. Okay? We don't need Snoke anymore. Kylo Ren's going to be our bad guy now. The dynamic between Kylo Ren and Rey is a heck of a lot stronger than if we carried Snoke into Episode 9. So let's just get rid of him. And like I've said, I don't care that we don't know his backstory. It doesn't matter to me. And Star Wars being what it is, again, I'm going to keep hammering this point home. We treat Star Wars unfairly and very hypocritical to how we treat other franchises. We just do. And I was thinking of a few examples today, and I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about other movies, so I won't. But just this idea that we have to know the backstory of every single bad guy that's out there, we don't. It's not necessary. We never really found out exactly what happened with the Joker in The Dark Knight. We had a couple different versions of what he said, of how he got the scars on his face. I did have a funny side note thinking about that, though, and while this is a Star Wars podcast, and I don't want to wipe out too hard, I'll just do it really quick. How did the Joker in the Dark Knight movies, right? We'll just talk specifically about the Christopher Nolan movies. How did he go shopping? I mean, we weren't really into the way that things are heading right now when it comes to online ordering and even being able to order groceries online. I mean, that's going to do wonders for villains in movies, because now they don't have to go outside. They can just order everything to their house. But when The Dark Knight came out, how did he go grocery shopping? I mean, even when he didn't have the face makeup on in the one scene during the funeral, he still looked creepy and weird. I mean, was he just acting normal when he went to go get a dozen eggs? Okay, I'm sorry. I wiped out. But we treat Star Wars very unfairly in our judgment of it and how we go and critique it. Okay, so let me get back on point. Sorry for the deviation. I'm incredibly excited for what we have potentially for Episode 9 and the different ways and the different places that we can end up going. One thing that really popped out to me that I'm really intrigued by, that I'm not going to hold on to, like, if they don't do this, I'll be mad. I just think it would be fascinating. I'm really intrigued by seeing the arc of Rey follow, and I believe that probably will in some way, shape, or form, but seeing Rey's arc follow that of Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi, where when you meet Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi, he's owning the role. There's a moment in The Last Jedi before the second Force ship, that's what I'm calling it, by the way, when the Force is shipping Rey and Kylo together. This is the one where she's standing underneath the Falcon, and he notices the water on his glove after they exchange. You called me a monster. You are a monster. That's right. I am a monster. Oh my gosh, you said that you were a monster. I didn't think you'd actually own to you being a monster. Does that mean that you're not really a monster in your mind? Because you're not looking like a monster to me, because I'm kind of feeling what you got going on. There's a moment right before that where she goes into the cockpit to see Chewie. And it's when she walks out, it's the scene where the Porgs are all going nutty. She asked Chewie if he had reached the Resistance yet. And then she also went and asked him about about Finn. And there was a presence she had in the way that she asked that to Chewie in a very I'm in charge kind of way. Keep trying. Let me know if you find Finn. And in that moment, I just had this thought that, wow, it'd be really cool to see her step up as the leader. It'd be really cool to see her step into that ownership role, and we're paralleling obviously a lot of what we've seen in other films, certainly in the original trilogy, but with the battle with Kylo Ren. Again, not going the way that she thought I was going to go, and now he's going to be the supreme leader. Okay, so obviously she's going to be in a position where she has to do some rebuilding. And if she ends up being the head of the Resistance, the lead of the Resistance, or she is just in charge of a new flock of Jedi, I'm very intrigued to see her come into her own to carry that confidence in what she's capable of doing. those are the moments in the movie in The Last Jedi that I really, really loved, was that watching her transition throughout the film as she's coming to the realizations and getting her questions answered, and then getting to that point in the battle against Kylo Ren where she doesn't give in to his call to join him. And she takes it upon herself to try to get the lightsaber, to take matters into her own hands, and she fights him. She's able to get away. Obviously, there's a level of confidence and power that she's going to have in doing that. And that conversation at the end of the film, when she's standing there with the broken lightsaber, and she says, how are we going to rebuild the Resistance with all this? And Leia just says, we have everything that we need. And she has the books. This idea that maybe we get a couple years down the line, and Kylo Ren has reorganized the First Order, and the legend of Luke Skywalker has now resonated in the galaxy like it did with the kids at the end of the film. And you have different parts of the galaxy, those that received the signal at the end of The Last Jedi and didn't answer the call to help them on Crate, have now joined the call. And the variety and the mix of individuals that you can bring in to form a larger rebellion for one last battle. The moment in The Last Jedi when Luke, for the second time, does that everything that you just said was wrong to Kylo Ren, to Ben. And Luke, and everything slows down, and Rey is rescuing the remainder of the Resistance, who are now just cobbled together on the Falcon. And he says, the rebellion is reborn today. And I won't be the war. Yeah, the rebellion is reborn today. The war is just beginning, and I won't be the last Jedi. That statement in and of itself, and what it could potentially mean, and what it means for J.J. Abrams to make Episode 9, it just opens up the world immensely. You've answered the Rey question. You've got your villain established. You've got a dynamic of those two now. And now we can head into this final movie with what Luke said. The Resistance has now become the rebels again, and we'll see if J.J. Abrams keeps with that. The war has now just begun, and he's not going to be the last Jedi. The Jedi aren't going to come to an end. And I love the way they close out Luke's arc. I know so many people are pitching a fit about it, and I've been actually, just so you guys are aware, for those that go to the YouTube channel and listen to the podcast there, I'll just be upfront about it, I've been deleting comments left and right. I don't want to hear from the individuals who come into the comment section where I love this movie, and I know that if you're listening, you probably do too, and they just want to bring in their negativity. If it's constructive criticism, that's fine. But there's been a lot of people coming in, they're just making really ridiculous and offensive, in my opinion, comments, and I've just been deleting them because I'd rather look at all this from a positive light, because I love this film. I don't need to. I'm fine debating the movie. I'm fine talking about it. People want to discuss their criticisms and how I feel differently. I don't have any problem with that at all. But I'm just not going to take this blanket negativity and the bashing of the fandom of people that do like this movie from those individuals that don't. And again, it's fine if you don't like the movie. I don't have any problem with that. But just don't come in and bring your Star Wars hate into my thread. So that being said, what Luke says in that statement to me, and what Rian Johnson has set up, handing it to J.J. Abrams, is the greatest news, in my opinion, now that the movie is out. I was okay with Colin Trevorrow directing it. I was also okay with him not directing it, and I'm better with J.J. Abrams doing it. There isn't a single J.J. Abrams film that I don't like. I like all of J.J. Abrams' movies, and The Last Jedi gave us so much, was so thick and was so dense in the mythology and the emotion, in my opinion, especially between Kylo Ren and Rey, that JJ now is in the best position to come in and just wrap this up, because we'll always have The Last Jedi. Those moments between Kylo Ren and Rey in The Last Jedi they're my favorite. I love the way that was handled. I made mention last week episode 105 about kind of the parallels between Anakin and Padme and Attack of the Clones, and how that, the way that Lucas handled it in that movie was clunky. Rian Johnson didn't handle it clunky, in my opinion. I'm a hopeless romantic. I don't hide that at all. I wear it as a badge of honor. I'm more romantic than my wife, for crying out loud. I probably like romantic comedies more than she does. But be that as it may, I love what Rian Johnson was able to do so effectively in The Last Jedi, where I never thought that somebody would be able to get me to feel sympathy for Kylo Ren after killing his dad. Now, we are talking about a movie, we are talking about a different universe, and so it's easy to take the real world, the real world circumstances out of it that would plague that from happening. In the real world, you have the other things you have to deal with if you go and murder somebody. In Star Wars, you can kind of scoot past that, right? And you can do the mental gymnastics, as I borrow it from the guy I do the show with, Drew, who gave me that one. I won't take credit for it. You can do the mental gymnastics, but even doing the mental gymnastics, you've got to make it work. And Rian Johnson makes it work. By the moment where we get the scene right before Luke goes and blows up the hut, which, if you didn't know, that was all done in camera. When Kylo Ren and Rey touch fingers, the most erotic finger touching I've ever seen, who knew? When they do that, that is all practical when Luke shows up and blows the hut up. They actually blew the hut up. They did it all in one take. I thought it was awesome. It just kind of goes back to how much care Rian Johnson put into this into this movie. Let me jump back real quick. I will get into the crate battle. I really do want to talk about that because I love the Battle of Crate. There's a number of different things I want to cover on this. But just one more quick point on Reylo, on Kylo Ren and Rey, and the finger touching and all that. And I'm going to go a little bit deep on here, but I do. This is how my mind sort of gets to why that moment is so poignant. If you were to extrapolate the life of Kylo Ren and Rey, you can't say that as much about Kylo Ren because you don't know really what he's been up to while with the First Order, but if we are to make the assumption that he probably didn't have a lot of female relationship experience from his time being at the Jedi Academy with Luke to when he would join the First Order, okay? You could say that maybe he had a better opportunity to have a relationship. Certainly Rey doesn't, right? I mean, I think it's pretty clear. Rey's been in isolation. She's been on Jakku. Even, Finn makes a joke and Finn to a certain extent too. I can bring him into this equation, but Finn makes a joke. He got a boyfriend, cute boyfriend in the Force Awakens when they're on the Millennium Falcon. But Rey's not gonna. Neither of these two are gonna have any kind of experience when it comes to romance or dealing with those types of feelings and emotions. And for me, that's what makes all those scenes work really well because they're all very innocent, for lack of I'm sure there's a better word I can use, but they're very innocent in those moments to the point where if they're sharing feelings and emotions, and in that scene they certainly are. I mean, when Rey goes in to the dark place, to the Force Cave on Ahch-To, a scene that I didn't really care for that much when I first saw it, that I love the whole mirror sequence now. I absolutely love that scene. The finger snapping and the show me and the echoing and the dozen rays that are there or whatever. I think that's all great. But when you get to the end of that and then you see her, she's in the hut and she's still sitting there next to the fire and she's having that one-on-one conversation with Kylo Ren before they went and touched fingers, she's now sharing in this experience. Probably one of the most emotional personal experiences and getting closer to the acceptance of what really is the truth about her parents. And in that moment, then it makes all the sense in the world why something as simple as two fingers touching one another would become such an important moment for both of those individuals. I mean, they really are complete novices when it comes to this, and very innocent, in my opinion, when it comes to those emotions. And I'm just, again, sort of projecting onto Kylo Ren that is the case. I mean, who knows? He could have had a relationship or, trolled around on the finalizer with some female, First Order stormtroopers. Who knows? But for the sake of not having that knowledge, we can just say probably not. The guy's kind of still an infant, if you think about it. Kind of still a teenager. Hasn't really matured beyond the age of 16. I'm 45, and I've barely matured beyond the age of 15. So there you go. So those scenes and that emotion, to me, completely and totally resonate, to the point where we get to the supremacy. And I keep saying that. I got to choose my words differently. To the point has been becoming a crutch of mine, and I apologize for that. When we get to the supremacy, and in the moment where he asks Rey to join him, he thinks that she'll actually go and do this. And, Rey holds out and then doesn't. And then you get just that amazing tearing apart of the lightsaber. So, full circle, all of this is to say, in J.J. Abrams, I trust with what he can do. And the potential that we have for Episode 9. An idea, like, here's an idea for you. What if we are a couple of years down the line? And what if Rey has begun training other individuals and Padawans? And what if Kylo Ren has taken on an apprentice? There's a lot of options available for some really interesting new characters and new dynamics. The idea of Kylo Ren now having an apprentice who's a bit out of control, that to me is kind of exciting. That's an interesting take there. Because what if he's got this guy who's an attack dog as a dark side apprentice, but he doesn't really have that much control of him, that to me is very, very appealing, where you've got this other threat that's out there sort of doing Kylo Ren's bidding. But now we've got 2 years to go and talk about that, so I don't want to get too far ahead of myself.
I've seen this raw strength only once before. It didn't scare me enough then. It does now.
All right, let's get into a bit of the battle on Crate. I absolutely love Crate. Crate might be one of my favorite locations. Now, I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about this, but just in my head, between Hoth and Crate might be my favorite. I love that location. I love this white salt surface with this blood red crystals underneath the surface. The mineral, the cave when the Falcon goes flying in. I just think the visual on that. I mean, I love the visuals of all of it. The white on red of the entire promotion of The Last Jedi, I just think is spectacular. I love the look of all that. But what they do on Crate, and Rian Johnson said that one of the reasons why they ended up going with that route of having those ski speeders sort of tear into the planet and having that blood red look was that it was a war that took place, but they couldn't show blood, right? They couldn't show blood and guts, and so they said, well, what if it looked like the planet was being ripped apart? In your mind, doesn't make the one-on-one comparison, but I think it's more on a subconscious level, to where we think about it tearing it up and you kind of get this uneasy feeling of this planet being ripped apart. It's not because you're thinking of it as a physical being, but it's just because your mind is putting that connection together on a subconscious level, because that's what that conjures up. And I just think that visual is fantastic, especially when after the walkers fire on Luke and they finally stop firing right before Luke walks out. There's a wide shot of what the layout looks like in front of the door with the hole blown into it, and then what the devastation has taken place. I mean, and it looks. I mean, if you kind of squint, you could imagine like a body that's just been blown apart, with the different palettes of them. Now the black, the black and the white and the red, and just this massive devastation has taken place right before Luke comes walking out from it. Just some of the visuals in that moment are just spectacular. I want a poster of when Luke first walks out and the camera is behind him, and he's almost in profile, and it's got the First Order arsenal with the sun in the background in that orange sort of palette behind it. I want that as a big wide poster to hang on my wall. I love that entire battle. It really works for me on every single level. And the one thing about it that I love the most, and if I mentioned this last week, again, I apologize, but the one thing I love about that battle on Crate the most is right at there's a moment right for me where Rose is being chased by 3 TIE fighters, and she says she can't shake them. And there's a moment every single time I watch it where that moment of the battle, you're about to go and ask yourself, what in the world are they going? What were they thinking? What are they going to do? How is this going to rectify itself? And that's when the Falcon shows up. And it takes the whole battle into a different direction, and you just get this mass of TIE fighters chasing after the Millennium Falcon. And it is the Force Awakens had one of my favorite Falcon sequences, even more so than the asteroid chase in The Empire Strikes Back when they were on Jakku escaping those TIE fighters. And Rey was flying the Millennium Falcon for the first time. This rivals that. When you get the theme from A New Hope on the Death Star run, and Chewie flying the Falcon after being chased by it into the mines. I love all of that, and it's such a great moment when that happens before we get that final confrontation between Luke, because we've had everything that's led up to that point, and all this setup to get us to Crate, and then it absolutely pays off all the way to the finish. Every single beat that it hits, from Luke showing up to the elegance, if you will, of the battle that kind of takes place, right? Whatever you want to call it. The standoff. The elegance of the standoff between Kylo Ren and between Luke, it's just, I want to watch it over and over and over again, because it's just so amazing to watch. And it makes the moment when Luke is on the rock and he's floating there and he's force projecting himself even that much more powerful. And then leading up to his finally giving in to the Force. I don't understand the complaints that people have with the way that Luke went out. I really, really don't. I think that was handled brilliantly. I think that was exactly the perfect finish to Luke Skywalker's arc, as he basically gives into the Force, which hands off now the story completely, apart from what I believe will surely be his Force ghost presence in Episode 9. But this is now Rey. Rey is now your Jedi. And I personally, it's fine. It can be my Jedi any day of the week. It's just, Jedi, the day is long. I'm totally fine with that. And the way that Rian Johnson handled that, the way that he gave us the shot with a bit of a sunset on the mountain on Ahch-To, after we see him disappear and we see his robe blow away in the breeze, to the cut to Kylo Ren marching into the base on Crate, and the Resistance has fled, and that final moment between Rey and Kylo Ren, their last Force ship at the end of the movie, just handles it brilliantly. And, getting to the finish, and that setup at the end with that final scene after the Falcon jumps into hyperspace with those kids, and that kid raising his broom up, sort of looking to the horizon of what's going to be the future of this franchise, and certainly the finale in Episode 9. That is the finale of Episode 106. You can find the show on YouTube, Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, Podbean, talkshownerd@gmail.com if you want to drop me an email. You can also find me on Twitter @Jon, Jon Justice. I'll be back again next week for the first show of 2018. Why is it significant? Because it'll be the first show of the year 2018. So I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much for checking the show out. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did recording it. And until next week, may the Force be with you always.
My